Hello chess friends and welcome to Start of Chess channel and welcome back to our Danish Gambit series. So in this series we're covering this very sharp opening for whites and for black's perspective. We're trying to see what are the common mistakes that you can make in this very aggressive opening, and I think the Danish Gambit, it's really one of these irregular openings. If you maybe playing as white, you should try to avoid it, but still I kind of think that this Danish Gambit, with the evaluation of computers and with the new engine performances, I think the Danish Gambit will be more and more explored. And I think if you're maybe a stronger player, and if a stronger player faces a weaker player, I think that the stronger player could sometimes try to surprise his opponent by playing the Danish Gambit. And I think you should be at least familiar with some great basic rules of the Danish Gambit and how you should counterplay white's ideas. So the game that I've prepared today, it's a great gameplay by Hikaru Nakamura against Ildar Ibragimov. Ildar Ibragimov is a Russian grandmaster. Maybe he's not the most popular Russian grandmaster, but he was above 2600 rated, and he was his peak level was around 2006 and around 2007. So the game is from 2007, in which Hikaru Nakamura was 20 years old, and Hikaru Nakamura's rating, as you can see, was around 2650. So Hikaru Nakamura slightly better, and you see now he probably thought, okay, I'm playing against a weaker opponent, I try the Danish Gambit, and be prepared. This is really wild, and I think in this video you see how basically the Danish Gambit can go wrong, also for white, also for black, because the evaluation bar will jump simply for white, for black, because it's really hard to see the best tactics on the board. So let's check out now the game. Here e4 played by Hikaru, we have e5 by Ibragimov, we have d4, e takes d4, and now the common Danish Gambit move, the move c3. Here Ildar Ibragimov takes, d takes c3. Here we have bishop to c4, the normal idea, and now Ildar Ibragimov plays, I think, one of the best ways against the Danish Gambit. He plays the normal knight to c6 move. First of all, this move knight to c6 is controlling very important two squares. First of all, this square e5, it's very important because you could face some ideas of queen to f3, then you have the opportunity to play knight to e5, and you're creating a double attack against the queen, against the bishop, and also you're protecting the f7. So that's one of the most important things. The second good square that the knight on c6 is protecting is a potential knight to a5 move after potential queen to b3. So then you could play a double attack again against the queen on b3 and again against the bishop on c4, and then you could simply take out the bishop, because the bishop on c4 is actually one of the best minor pieces in the Danish Gambit for white. So that's why this knight to c6 is very, very important. In the continuation, Hikaru continues with fast development. Of course, he wants now to secure the king by castling and then continue simply his attack, because the idea of the Danish Gambit is simply to give up some pawns, but just in order to get a better piece activity. So in the continuation, Ildar Ibragimov tried d6. So here we have this idea, queen to b3. Ildar Ibragimov defends this position with queen to d7. So far, it's of course an unnatural square for the queen. The queen is not good here, but at least we're protecting the pawn on f7, and now Hikaru simply castles. And now comes this idea. So here knight to a5, simply played by Ibragimov. After queen to c3, we have knight takes c4, and after queen to c4, so far white has still a good control of the light squares, because the e4 and the queen on c4 are controlling some d5 possibilities. Here black could try maybe to try to counterplay with c6 d5. That could be a tactical option, but not before you have secured the king. First you have to develop your minor pieces, and you see now with the move d6 the bishop is a little bit blocked out. If you play knight to f6, then you could face some rook to d1 e5 ideas. So the queen, as we said, is a little bit unnatural there, so that's why it's hard to develop the minor pieces for black. Here Ildar Ibragimov, I think, played a decent opening line with knight to e7, knight to c3, and now shifting the knight to g6, where again the knight is not on a natural square, but at least it's controlling something. At least it's controlling again this e5 square, because as we said, rook to d1 could happen, and then maybe e5. Then we have at least some kind of a control of that square. And still we have to notice, I think black has still the bishop pair, maybe not such a great bishop pair now, but in the later stage of the game, when we improve our minor pieces, maybe this bishop pair can be again good. So here in the game, bishop to e3, here c6 by Ildar Ibragimov, and that's actually now maybe the first slight inaccuracy by black. there is always one rule that I try to apply in chess openings. Maybe it's not possible always, but at least I'm considering this option when I'm playing an opening, and that's the rule by playing the pieces first and then the pawn. So the better way is simply to play bishop to e7, because with the move bishop to e7 we're only one move far away from castling, so it's a faster development style. Here after move c6, okay, you have taken out maybe the weak square here. We have taken out the possibility of the knight to jump on d5, but we have played the pawn move, and now Hikaru, as a sharp attacker, you know how Hikaru loves these types of positions. He's continuing simply the game with knight to d4. Here now knight to e5, we have queen to e2. Here Ildar Ibragimov plays queen to g4, which is perfectly fine. We want to trade off the queens, we want to simplify the game. Then we're having still a +1 pawn situation. Then we can go and activate our bishop pair, and it would be a perfect position here for black. But of course Hikaru is not interested. Plays now f3, queen to h5, and now comes this tricky idea, and that's actually the question why that's actually the answer why this move bishop to e7 was slightly better, because Hikaru has now the opportunity to play a very dangerous tactic here, knight to b5, and you see now the king is still there. If you would have the bishop here on e7, then you would simply castle and get out of this tactical mess. So here in the game, Ildar Ibragimov accepts now the challenge. We have c takes b5, knight to b5, king to d8, protecting the c7. The fort was very dangerous, so that's why king to d8. And you see now, if the bishop would have been on e7, Ildar Ibragimov could have a castle, but now the king is in the stuck in the center. Although the evaluation is about equal, but the king security is not so good here for black. So in the game, the rook from f to d1, attacking simply the d6, and now here bishop to d7. Instead of this rook to d1, maybe a slightly better idea here to play bishop to a7, then to try bishop to b6. Maybe bishop to e6 is now good defensive idea here for black, at least trying maybe some ideas of king to e7, hiding behind the bishop. But still, it's very risky. Maybe even one of the good ideas can be simply to give up the rook for the bishop, and then you are not vulnerable to some dark square attacks by the bishop on b6. But okay, here Ildar Ibragimov tried, as we said, after the move rook to d1, which maybe was not the best of ways here by Hikaru. Of course, the rook is on the d file, but at least the bishop is protecting the d6 square. Now after move rook to d1, here Ildar Ibragimov attacks simply the knight. We have now a4. What Ildar Ibragimov calculated here is maybe this line, bishop to b5, and here after queen to b5, b6 would be very risky here for black, because then you could face here the move f4, and then if you have to play maybe something like knight to g6, I think you could face some troubles, because queen to h5, you see you cannot move the knight. The only way to defend this position is to play maybe something like knight to f3. You have to give up back your piece. After g takes f3, maybe queen to g5, queen to b5. After a takes b5, the position is about equal, although white is much better, I think, because of this activity on the a file. There is also the threat of bishop to b6. So, but okay, after move a4, you saw now the tactical problems that black can face. The a file attack after queen to b5, also some discoveries. The knight would be then stuck here. f4 would be the threat. So here Ildar Ibragimov played a great move. As we said, we want now to develop further our pieces. Bishop to e7. Ildar Ibragimov didn't react, and now after bishop takes a7, here Ibragimov found this defensive idea to simply give up the rook for the bishop, because as we said, after potential bishop to b6, you could face really some serious troubles on dark square. So here after move rook to a7, of course knight to a7, and now the fun starts on the king side, because I think a little bit Hikaru Nakamura's attack has splashed now. It's not so dangerous anymore. The knight is on the edge of the board. Here Ibragimov played now the move g5. Better idea, which I think causes now many trouble here for white, is to move bishop to g5, because you can play then afterwards bishop to f4, and even if you try some g3 ideas to block the dark squares, then you could face always this idea knight takes f3. That's actually a great attack. Now in the continuation of the game, maybe rook to a3 would be sort of a must move, because you have to protect your third rank, and then black could maybe play something like king to e7. This is now a much better position for black. Black has, I think, a very nice coordination with the minor pieces. You see also the bishop is aiming there. So with this three pieces around white's king with the activity of the queen, I think white is simply tactically lost. But okay, instead of this move bishop to g5, Ilya Ibragimov played now the move g5, and the best way here for Hikaru Nakamura is now simply to retreat with knight to b5. That's the best way, simply getting your piece back, because now if you try, for instance, g4, it's not so good here for black to push the pawn immediately on g4, because white can simply pass through with the move f4, and then after something like knight to g6, we can try again f5. If knight to e5 again happens, then queen to d2, and I think white will win the game here on the d file. We can simply take it out, include now this rook into the game, and again black is in serious trouble. But here Hikaru didn't play, as we said, after the move g5, he didn't play the move knight to b5. He didn't get his knight back. He didn't attack, counter-attack here around the square d6, and now he tried h3 to protect this g4 move, which actually, as we said, wasn't a threat. If g4 happens, then you have always the opportunity to play f4. And you can guess what Ilya Ibragimov did now. He played the move g4 anyway. If you try now f4, which happened in the game, you could also face some knight to f3 ideas. But let's check out now what happens if you take. If you take h takes g4, then again you're tactically lost here. Or maybe if you try f takes g4, the same thing happens. We can simply take bishop takes g4, h takes g4, then knight to g4 can happen, and now a queen to f3 would be sort of a must move to somehow protect further your position. Also try something like queen to h3, trading off the queen, simplifying the game. But then it's simply too late, because you get queen to c5, and then you have to move. We can simply play knight to f2. You have to again move. We can take out the rook. If you take out now the knight on d1, we can also take out the knight on a7. Really wild stuff. So I think white is simply lost here. Black has an extra piece, and still the protection around the square d6. Meanwhile, also the white king is in danger, so that's why here f takes g4 is simply not a possibility. So that's why Hikaru Nakamura passed through with the move f4. But it gets even worse, because as we said, this is now the serious threat. Knight to f3, opening up the position in the game. King to h1. If you take now here g takes f3, then g takes f3 will happen. You have to move the queen, and then you get also rook to g8, rook to g1, and it's simply a position that you can resign. So that's why Hikaru gets out of this mess, plays king to h1, but Ilya Ibragimov plays rook to g8 anyway. Now e5 by Hikaru Nakamura, and again maybe knight to b5 is an opportunity, but I still think that this move is a little bit too late, because again I think black can simply play g takes h3, and if you try now to take out the knight, then you get rook to g2. Let's see, maybe you can try queen to e3. The problem is now the queen will sneak in. The queen will sneak into g on the square g3, and then we can threaten also here the move queen to h2. Even if you try to compete here with rook to g1, again queen to g3 will happen, because you cannot take. Rook takes g2, queen to g2 is checkmate. So I'm not seeing good ways how to defend this position anymore. The engine says it's a forced checkmate in 5 here for black. So as said, after move rook to g8, it's almost a tactically lost here again for white. In the game, Hikaru now tried to open somehow the position on the d file, but it's again a little bit too late. We have g takes h3, now we have g3. Here Hikaru tries now to lock somehow the g file. Rook takes g3 here by Ibragimov. We have e takes d6, we have bishop to f6, now queen to c2, and now after rook to g2 in this position, Hikaru Nakamura resigned, because there's nothing that can be done. You have to lose the queen, because also there is this threat. Rook to h2 is a forced checkmate. So really brilliant game by Ilya Ibragimov. He defended this position against such a sharp attacker like Hikaru Nakamura. This is the lecture how this Danish Gambit can go wrong, I think, with some great counterplays by black. If you play very sharp chess like this guy Ilya Ibragimov, you can defend this position, still risky choices. We have seen also some great opportunities for Hikaru Nakamura. This passive play then after a couple moves were simply not so good by Hikaru, but still I kind of like this choice by Hikaru Nakamura, because if you search maybe some other top grandmasters like Magnus Carlsen, I don't know, Fabiano Caruana, or some other brilliant grandmasters of these days playing the Danish Danish Gambit, you will not find any games because they're simply not playing it. They're playing more pragmatic chess. As I said, Hikaru Nakamura, maybe Badur Yobava, and maybe other sharp players who simply love to play the Evans Gambit, Danish Gambit, even sometimes the King's Gambit, like Vasily Ivanchuk or maybe some other sharp attackers. So that's why we should always recognize someone's effort when he's trying to play attractive chess. Sometimes it goes wrong, sometimes it works, but still I kind of like to see the best players playing this beautiful opening. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. If you want to see more videos about the Danish Gambit, please check out my series so far. Here is the link to our Danish Gambit series. And if you want to see maybe some other openings from Black's perspective, if you have trouble maybe to play as Black, check out my Nimzo in the defense series as a good response to d4, and my hyper accelerated Dragon Sicilian defense as a good response to e4. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.